Have you ever, like, noticed a kid, maybe someone you know well, or even just, like, someone you see out and about,
Hmm.
and something about them just seems different, like super insightful or just so curious? It's kind of like what we're
Yeah.
talking about today, a deep dive into gifted children and teenagers.
I'm excited for this one.
Me too. This should be really good.
Yeah, you've given me a ton of great material to work with.
Yeah, we've got some really good stuff here. Articles from Oxford Royale and the Davidson Institute,
Oh, yeah.
resources from the Raising Children Network, a TEDx talk transcript, and even stuff from Up to Date, which is a
Wow.
resource that's used by healthcare professionals. So we're really getting,
A broad range.
yeah, a really broad look at this.
It's going to be good.
So our goal is to kind of synthesize all this stuff for you so you can understand like the main parts of giftedness,
Right.
the characteristics, the hurdles they might face, and then importantly, like, how can we support them?
Yeah. How can we help these kids?
Exactly. So think of this deep dive as your shortcut to feeling really informed.
Love that.
And hopefully we'll have some surprising insights along the way
I think we will, for sure.
without like totally overloading you with information.
Right. Exactly.
So let's just jump right in. What does it actually mean for a child to be gifted?
Okay.
So, I mean, it seems like there's not one universally accepted definition.
Right. There isn't. And the term giftedness, it can be kind of open to interpretation.
Yeah.
But I think one of the most influential definitions comes from the U.S. Department of Education.
Okay.
And they talk about children and youth who demonstrate high performance capabilities
Okay.
in areas like intellectual, creative, artistic leadership, or in specific academic fields.
Uh-huh.
And they say these kids show the potential for high achievement.
Okay, so it's a lot more than just like getting good grades.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just about being like a straight A student.
Right.
There's so much more to it.
Yeah.
And Dr. Jim Delisle, who's like a leading voice in this area,
Okay.
he describes giftedness as an innate ability to both detect and comprehend the world in complex ways that differ significantly from age-expected norms.
Okay.
So, it's not about being a mini adult.
Right.
It's about having this totally different way of interacting with the world intellectually.
That's really interesting.
It really is.
So it's less about like achievement and more about a fundamental difference in how their minds process information.
Exactly. Their brains are just wired differently.
Wow.
And the Davidson Institute, they actually refer to giftedness as a brain-based difference, like a part of neurodiversity,
So you can think of it as like,
a different way the brain is structured.
okay.
And, it's important to remember that a child can be gifted in so many different areas.
Right. Like not just academics.
No, not just academics.
Yeah.
They could be gifted creatively, socially, even physically.
Mm.
And the intensity of these gifts, it can vary a lot from one child to the next.
What about when a child is gifted, but they also have like a disability?
Yeah, that's a really important point.
Yeah.
And there's actually a term for that. Twice exceptional, or 2E.
2E. Okay.
And this refers to kids who are both gifted and also have a disability,
Okay.
like a learning disorder, ADHD, or autism spectrum disorder.
Right.
And it's crucial to recognize that these two parts of them
Mm-hmm.
can sometimes mask each other.
So their giftedness might like overshadow
Exactly.
their struggles.
Yeah, or vice versa.
Right.
So we need to make sure they get the support they need for both their strengths and their weaknesses.
It's so interesting too that like these advanced abilities, they often run in families.
That's true.
And you see them across all different cultures.
Yeah, you see it everywhere.
So that kind of suggests there's like a strong biological component.
For sure, there's definitely a genetic aspect to it,
Yeah.
but it also shows that giftedness isn't limited by background or environment.
Right. It can happen anywhere.
Exactly.
And the Raising Children Network, they make a really interesting distinction between gifted and talented.
Oh, yeah, tell me about that.
So they say that gifted often refers to those like natural above average abilities. Okay.
Whereas talents are gifts that have been developed
Oh,
through support and encouragement and practice.
So like a child might have a natural gift for music,
Uh-huh.
but they only become truly talented when they learn an instrument and put in the time to practice.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's a good way to kind of think about the difference between potential and developed ability.
Yeah. I like that.
So now that we've kind of gotten a handle on like what giftedness is,
Right.
what are some of the things we might actually see in a gifted child?
Oh, there are so many things.
Yeah.
But the Davidson Institute and the Raising Children Network, they have some really good lists.
Okay.
So one thing you might notice is that they're understanding things way above their grade level. Like they
Right.
just get it.
Yeah.
And they often have a really surprising emotional depth and sensitivity.
Even at a young age.
Even at a young age, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And then there's that intense curiosity.
Oh, yeah. Always asking questions.
Always asking why.
And they're so enthusiastic about their interests.
Mm-hmm.
And these interests can be really specific.
Like, what do you mean specific?
Like, they might be fascinated by medieval weaponry.
Oh, wow.
Or the life cycle of some obscure deep-sea creature.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty specific.
Yeah, and they often have this quirky sense of humor that's kind of beyond their years.
Like a very mature sense of humor.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
And they're amazing problem solvers.
Okay.
They come up with these creative solutions that you wouldn't expect.
Like outside the box thinking?
Totally outside the box.
Wow.
And they learn so quickly. They just absorb information.
Like they don't need a lot of repetition.
No, they get it right away.
That's amazing.
It is. And they're also really aware of themselves.
Okay.
Aware of other people and even aware of global issues.
So very socially aware.
Yeah, very in tune with the world around them.
That's fascinating.
It is. And some gifted children, they reach developmental milestones earlier than expected, like learning to read at a very young age.
Oh, wow.
And they might even prefer hanging out with older kids or adults.
I've noticed that.
Yeah, it's common because they feel more of an intellectual connection with them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It does.
So they're not just like hanging out with older kids to be cool.
No,
Yeah.
they're genuinely interested in what they have to say.
Right. They can actually like have a conversation.
Exactly.
That's really interesting.
It is, and there are a few other common traits I wanted to mention.
Okay, what else?
Well, they have this amazing ability to concentrate,
Okay.
especially when they're interested in something.
But if they're not interested.
Yeah, then it can be a struggle.
Right.
And they ask a lot of questions.
Oh, yeah, the why questions.
Endless why questions.
It never stops.
Never stops.
So if you're someone who doesn't like answering a lot of questions.
This might not be the kid for you.
Right, exactly.
But it's a good thing.
Yeah, it shows they're curious.
Exactly.
Okay.
They have incredible memories.
Oh, wow.
They remember everything.
That's a good thing.
It can be a blessing and a curse.
Right.
And their imaginations, they're so vivid and active.
Okay.
They're always coming up with new ideas and stories.
That's great for creativity.
It is. And they often have a really advanced vocabulary for their age.
So they sound like little adults sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes they do. It's pretty amazing.
That is pretty amazing.
It is. And, you know, the Davidson Institute, they make a distinction between generally gifted children
Okay.
and those who are profoundly gifted.
So like the top tier.
Yeah, the top 0.01%.
Wow. Are there like major differences in their traits?
Yeah, definitely.
That's
All
fine.
those characteristics we just talked about, they're even more intense in profoundly gifted kids.
Okay.
And they often manifest in some pretty unique ways.
So give me an example.
Well, they have incredibly fast comprehension,
Okay.
and they need constant mental stimulation.
So like they're always looking for something new.
Yeah, they get bored easily if they're not challenged.
Right.
Repetitive tasks are like torture for them.
I can imagine.
They just grasp concepts so quickly, and they need less repetition than other kids.
Because they already get it.
Exactly. They're already a step ahead.
Wow.
They tend to think in really complex ways.
So not just the surface level stuff.
No, they want to understand the big picture,
Uh-huh.
the underlying principles, the connections,
Okay.
and they're very precise in their thoughts and language.
Oh, interesting.
You might hear them say, "It depends," a lot.
Because there are always nuances.
Exactly. They see all the different angles, and they have high expectations for themselves and for others.
So they might be perfectionists.
Yeah, they can be. And they have a strong sense of justice and fairness.
Okay.
And their interests, they can be even more specific and unusual.
So it might be harder for them to find friends.
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge for some profoundly gifted kids.
So it sounds like all these intense intellectual and emotional characteristics,
Right.
while they represent like huge potential,
Yeah,
they can also lead to some unique challenges.
absolutely. It's not always easy being gifted.
It's not always a smooth ride.
Definitely not.
So what are some of the challenges that gifted kids might face?
Well, one of the biggest ones is boredom,
Yeah, I can imagine.
especially in school. If they're not being challenged enough,
Right.
they can actually start underachieving.
Really?
Yeah. And the Davidson Institute, they say that around 40% of gifted students
Wow.
may actually be underachievers.
40%? That's a lot.
It's a huge number,
Yeah.
and it suggests that their potential isn't being met.
So what are some of the reasons for that?
Well, lack of challenge is definitely a big one.
Yeah, if they're not stimulated,
Exactly.
they're going to get bored.
They're going to tune out.
Right.
But there are other factors, too.
Okay, like what?
Well, they might feel isolated socially.
If their interests are different.
Exactly.
Okay.
Or if their maturity level is different from their peers.
So they don't really fit in.
Yeah, they might feel like they don't belong. And they can get frustrated with the pace of learning in school.
It's too slow for them.
Way too slow.
Yeah.
And some gifted kids, they actually try to hide their abilities.
Oh, wow, to fit in.
Yeah, they don't want to stand out.
That's kind of sad.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And there's this TEDx talk by Heidi Haas-Gable,
Okay.
and she talks about Dabrowski's overexcitabilities.
Overexcitabilities. What's that?
So Dabrowski was a psychiatrist,
Okay.
and he identified these 5 areas where gifted people experience the world more intensely.
Okay.
Intellectual, psychomotor, creative, sensory, and emotional.
Wow. So it's like their whole system is heightened.
Exactly. It's not just about being smart.
Right.
It's about this whole body experience.
So tell me more about these overexcitabilities.
Okay, so intellectual overexcitability,
Uh-huh.
that's that intense curiosity and thirst for knowledge.
Okay.
They're always asking questions, always wanting to learn more.
Like those kids who are always reading.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Psychomotor overexcitability, that's about high energy and a need to move.
So they can't sit still?
No, they're always fidgeting, pacing,
Yeah.
talking.
Okay.
Creative overexcitability, that's about having a vivid imagination,
Uh-huh.
making unusual connections, coming up with new ideas.
So very creative kids.
Very creative.
Okay.
Sensory overexcitability is about being super sensitive to sensory input.
Like sounds and textures and things like that?
Exactly. They might be bothered by loud noises or bright lights,
Okay.
or certain fabrics might feel scratchy to them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then there's emotional overexcitability,
Okay.
which means experiencing emotions very deeply and intensely.
So they might be more sensitive.
Yeah, they might cry more easily or get angry more quickly.
Or feel joy more intensely.
Exactly. Their emotional range is just wider.
That's really interesting.
It is. And Gable points out that these intensities,
Yeah.
they can sometimes be mistaken for other things,
Like what?
like ADHD or autism.
Oh, wow. So it's important to get a proper diagnosis.
It's crucial. You don't want to mislabel a child.
Right.
And Gable also shares this really personal story about her own children.
Oh, okay.
They started developing anxiety, and they didn't want to go to school.
Oh, that's tough.
It was really hard for them.
Yeah.
And Gable felt like it was because they had to suppress so much of themselves.
To fit in.
To fit in, exactly.
That's a powerful image.
It is. It really captures the struggle.
So they're basically being told to be someone they're not.
In a way, yeah.
And that can be really damaging.
It can lead to a lot of emotional problems.
So what can we do to help these kids?
Well, there are a lot of things we can do.
Okay.
Let's hear them. The Oxford Royale article had some great advice.
Okay.
One thing they said was to encourage them to do things they're bad at.
Really?
Yeah, it sounds counterintuitive.
Yeah, it does.
But the idea is that gifted kids,
Uh-huh.
they often find academic success comes easily.
Right.
So they might not develop the resilience to cope with failure.
So by encouraging them to try things they're not good at,
Exactly.
they learn to deal with setbacks.
Yes, and they learn that it's okay to not be perfect at everything.
That's such an important lesson
It is, and it's so valuable later in life.
when things get harder.
Exactly like in university or in their careers.
Right.
So it's about building that frustration tolerance early on.
That makes a lot of sense.
It does.
What other practical tips did these sources have?
Well, another big one is providing the right tools and resources
Okay.
to fuel their intellectual curiosity.
So like what kind of tools?
Well, something as simple as a library card
Oh, yeah.
and the freedom to explore whatever interests them,
Even if it's like a super specific topic?
even if it's the history of paperclips.
Exactly.
And a quiet study space at home is really important too.
So they can focus.
Yeah, a place where they can concentrate without distractions.
Okay.
And clearly intellectually stimulating experiences are crucial.
Like what kind of experiences?
Museum visits,
Okay.
lectures, talks, scientific experiments.
Right. Anything that gets their minds going.
Ex-
And the Oxford Royale article also mentions that in some countries, giftedness can be recognized as a special education need.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Which opens up avenues for support.
So parents don't have to do it all alone.
Right. There's help out there.
Exactly.
That's good to know.
It is. And they also say that it's important not to assume a child will always be gifted.
What do you mean?
Well, they compare intellectual development to a growth spurt.
Oh, okay.
A child who's advanced early on
Uh-huh.
might just be developing faster,
Right.
but their peers might catch up later.
So don't label them for life.
Exactly.
Okay.
And avoid making assumptions about their future.
Right. Because they might change.
They might.
Okay.
And it's important to encourage them to develop a range of interests.
Yeah, not just focus on one thing.
Right, and to have backup plans,
Just in case.
just in case.
So what about providing intellectual challenges outside of school?
That's a great idea,
Yeah.
because gifted kids can get bored with the regular curriculum, so they might need something extra.
Like what kind of things?
Well, learning a new language,
Okay.
exploring advanced topics through books or documentaries,
Mhm.
maybe taking online courses, or
Yeah.
doing puzzles or strategy games.
So anything that keeps them engaged,
Exactly.
but also important to avoid overscheduling them.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They need downtime, too,
Right. They need time to be kids.
and time to just think and explore on their own.
Right. Balance is key.
Balance is everything.
So what about comparing them to other kids?
Don't do it.
Really?
It's so harmful.
Okay.
Don't compare them to their peers, their siblings, or anyone else.
Because it creates pressure.
It does, and it can damage their self-esteem.
So just focus on celebrating their individual strengths.
Yes, and the strengths of everyone around them.
Right. Everyone's unique.
Exactly.
Then what about their social lives?
Well, that can be tricky.
How so?
Gifted kids, they often have different interests and maturity levels.
Right. So they might not fit in with their peers.
Yeah, they might feel more comfortable with older kids, or even adults.
Yeah. So what should we do?
Be open-minded.
Okay.
Let him have friends who they connect with,
Even if they're older.
even if they're older, as long as it's a healthy and appropriate relationship.
Right. Of course.
It's about finding that balance.
Yeah. Between safety and letting them have friends.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the last thing I wanted to mention
Right.
is the importance of being honest with gifted kids about their abilities.
So don't hide it from them?
No, don't try to downplay it.
Okay.
They usually know they're different.
Uh-huh.
So be open and talk to them about it.
But also be realistic.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Giftedness isn't everything.
Right?
There are other qualities that are important for success.
Like hard work and perseverance.
Exactly.
Okay.
Social skills and emotional intelligence.
Right. So it's not just about being smart.
It's about being a well-rounded person.
And the up-to-date article, they talk a lot about educational interventions.
Yeah, they have some great insights.
Like what kind of things?
Well, they emphasize the importance of recognizing individual differences.
So not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Definitely not.
Okay.
And they say that we should focus on teaching concepts.
Rather than just memorizing facts.
Yeah, exactly. It's about understanding, not just regurgitating.
Right.
And they recommend using an interdisciplinary curriculum.
So connecting different subjects.
Yeah, showing how it all fits together.
That's interesting.
And they talk about using different ways to assess kids.
Not just standardized tests.
No, things like portfolios and projects.
Okay.
And performance-based tasks.
Some more hands-on stuff.
Yeah, more creative ways to show what they know.
I like that.
And they also talk about peer teaching.
So gifted kids can help their classmates.
Exactly. They can be mentors.
That's a good idea.
And it benefits everyone.
Right.
And they mention problem-based learning.
Where kids have to solve real-world problems.
Yeah, it's a great way to get them thinking critically.
Okay.
And they emphasize metacognition,
Metacognition, what's that?
thinking about thinking.
Oh, okay.
So helping kids understand how they learn best.
That's really important.
It helps them become more independent learners.
So overall, it's about creating a more flexible and engaging learning environment.
Exactly.
And the up-to-date article also talks about acceleration and enrichment.
Yes, those are two key strategies.
Okay, tell me more.
So acceleration means letting kids move through the curriculum at their own pace.
So if they're ahead, they can go faster.
Exactly.
Okay.
And enrichment means adding more depth and breadth to their learning.
So like giving them more challenging material?
Yeah, or independent research projects,
Okay.
or opportunities to explore their interests in more depth.
So it's about providing them with more opportunities
Exactly.
to learn and grow.
Exactly.
What about grouping gifted kids together?
Well, that can be effective,
Okay.
but only if it's done right.
What do you mean?
It needs to be combined with curriculum modifications.
So just putting them together isn't enough?
No, they need to be challenged.
Ah.
And they need to be engaged.
Right.
Otherwise, they'll just get bored.
And the up-to-date article also talks about social and emotional development.
Yeah, that's super important.
So how can we support that?
Well, we need to give them opportunities to connect with other gifted kids.
So they don't feel so alone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They need to know they're not the only ones.
Okay.
And mentoring programs can be helpful too.
So they can learn from older gifted individuals.
Yeah, and they can get support and guidance.
Right.
And teaching them skills like conflict resolution and decision-making
Uh-huh.
can help them navigate social situations.
So they can feel more confident?
Yes, and more comfortable in social settings.
Right.
And then for profoundly gifted kids,
The top tier.
yeah, they might need even more support.
Like what kind of support?
Well, traditional grade skipping might not be enough.
Because they're so far ahead.
Exactly.
Okay.
They might need a completely individualized learning plan.
So something really tailored to their needs.
Yeah, and mentorship from experts in their field.
Wow, that's pretty intense.
It is, but it's what they need.
And what about kids who are both gifted and have a learning disability?
The 2E kids,
Yeah.
they need a really balanced approach.
Okay.
Enrichment and acceleration in their areas of strength,
Uh-huh.
but also remediation for their weaknesses.
So supporting both sides.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the up-to-date article talks about the role of primary care providers.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, they can play a big role.
How so?
Well, they can help kids understand and value their differences.
So they don't feel like there's something wrong with them.
Exactly.
Okay.
And they can help families understand giftedness.
So it's not such a mystery.
Right.
Oh,
And they can provide guidance on things like asynchronous development.
where their intellectual and emotional maturity don't match up.
Yeah, that can be tough for kids and families.
Right.
And they can help with things like perfectionism and questioning authority.
So basically helping families navigate the challenges.
Exactly.
That's really valuable
It is, and they can also help assess educational programs.
to make sure they're a good fit.
Yeah, and they can monitor for emotional vulnerabilities.
So they can intervene if needed.
Exactly.
This has been such a great overview.
It has been a lot of information.
It has, but it's so important.
It is.
So what would you say are the key takeaways?
Well, I think the main thing is that giftedness is complex.
It's not just about being smart.
Right. It's so much more than that.
Okay.
It's about having unique intellectual, social, and emotional needs.
And we need to provide tailored support.
Absolutely. And
Well-
we need to meet them where they are.
And the goal is not just academic achievement.
No, it's about their overall well-being.
Right.
We want them to be happy and healthy
Exactly.
and to reach their full potential.
That's a great summary.
Thanks.
And it makes me think about something.
Oh, yeah? What's that?
How can we, as a society, do a better job of recognizing and nurturing giftedness?
That's a big question.
It is, but it's important.
It is. We need to make sure these kids feel supported.
And understood.
And challenged,
Right.
but not pressured.
It's a delicate balance.
It is.
So as you're thinking about everything we talked about today,
Uh-huh.
I encourage you to consider that question.
How can we create a world where gifted kids can thrive?
Exactly. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
Until next time.
See us.